The air hung heavy with the quiet threat of a late summer storm as the four men surrounded her. They weren't just men, they were a storm themselves, a cyclone of sharp words and cruel laughter. One of them, a hulking figure with a tattoo snaking up his neck, leaned down, his face a sneer of contempt. He looked at the wheelchair, then at her, and his voice dripped with poison. "Look at this," he jeered, loud enough for everyone in the park to hear. "An army hero? Can't even walk." The crowd at the park scattered, a wave of people parting to avoid the ugliness. Some glanced back with pity, others with fear, but all of them kept their distance. No one spoke. No one intervened. This silence, heavy and suffocating, was a far more painful assault than the men's words. In the center of it all, a woman named Lena sat perfectly still. Her hands, scarred and calloused, rested on the wheels of her chair. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, held a gaze so steady it seemed to absorb all the hatred and cruelty without a ripple. She wore a simple black t-shirt with a faded unit patch, a small, quiet symbol of a life that was once defined by movement, by strength, by the thunderous roar of a battlefield. Now she was confined to this chair, her silence her only armor. The hulking man, emboldened by the public's cowardice, kicked a small stone toward her. It rattled against the metal frame of her chair. "What's wrong, hero?" he taunted. "Don't got any friends to help you out?" His laughter was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed in the silence. But Lena's stillness wasn't born of fear. It was born of a memory, of 1,000 memories. It was born in the humid, dusty air of a far-off desert, in the thunderous echo of explosions, in the quiet camaraderie of men and women who would lay down their lives for each other. She remembered the day she lost her legs. It wasn't a heroic leap or a cinematic blast. It was a silent, insidious moment. One moment she was a soldier, running with a purpose, with a life full of promise stretched out before her. The next, a hidden device, a quiet snap, and a blinding white pain. The silence that followed was the loudest thing she had ever known. The cries of her comrades, the frantic, panicked voices of the medics, all of it was muffled, distant. Her world had been reduced to a single point of agony, a burning hole where her legs used to be. The medics had worked tirelessly, their faces a mask of grim determination. But she knew. She knew in that instant that her life as she had known it was over. Her recovery was a different kind of war. Physical therapy was a daily battle, each step of victory she could never truly claim. The phantom pains were ghosts that haunted her every waking moment, a constant, cruel reminder of what she had lost. But the hardest part wasn't the physical pain, it was the silence of her friends who didn't know what to say, the silence of a country that moved on, forgetting the sacrifices of its soldiers, the silence of the world that now saw her not as a hero, but as a disabled woman in a wheelchair. She had fought for a cause she believed in, for the simple, quiet right of others to live without fear. She had seen men and women die with honor, with a silent dignity that transcended the chaos of war. Their faces, their final words, their last breaths were etched into her memory, a constant, quiet reminder of the weight of her survival. She had carried the memory of a fallen comrade, a young man named David, whose laughter had been a constant source of light in the darkest of places. He had been a Green Beret, a silent warrior who moved with a purpose, a quiet strength that was both humbling and inspiring. He had saved her life once, throwing her to the ground moments before an explosion ripped through the air. He had died in that silent, dust-filled moment, and she had promised him she would live. She had promised to never forget the cost of freedom, the price of silent honor. The man with the tattoo now crouched in front of her, his face inches from hers. "What's the big deal, little lady?" he spat. "You sign up for the army, you get what's coming to you." The three other men laughed, a hollow, empty sound. The crowd remained silent, a sea of faces frozen in fear or apathy. This was a different kind of combat, one without a weapon, without a clear enemy, where the very air was a weapon, and the silent witnesses were the enemy. Lena's stillness was not weakness, it was a fortress. She had faced down armed men, the deafening roar of explosions, and the silent, creeping fear of death. This was nothing. She had seen worse. But as the man reached out, his hand moving toward her, A familiar tremor ran through her. It wasn't fear. It was something else. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the air. The man's face, a mask of smug cruelty, was inches from hers. She held his gaze, her eyes a mirror reflecting his own ugliness. And then, a sound. It was a quiet, subtle sound at first. The soft thud of boots on the pavement, a rhythmic, purposeful march. The men around her, so focused on their cruel game, didn't notice it first. But Lena did. She felt it in the subtle shift of the air, the sudden stillness of the birds in the trees. The man's hand was almost on her shoulder, a final, humiliating act of domination. And then a voice, calm and deep, cut through the park. "I believe you're mistaken," it said, the words a low, quiet thunder. "She's not alone." The man froze, his hand still suspended in the air. He turned slowly, his eyes widening in disbelief. And there they were, 32 men, all dressed in a quiet uniform of green shirts and dark pants. They weren't a screaming mob. They were a perfectly ordered, silent presence. Each man was a fortress, their bodies lean and strong, their faces etched with the quiet discipline of a life spent in service. They were a wall of silent honor, a living testament to an unspoken code. They were Green Berets. They moved as one, a silent tide flowing toward the 5 men. They didn't say a word. They didn't have to. The air was thick with their presence, a powerful, unspoken authority that dwarfed the petty cruelty of the men. They didn't raise their hands. They didn't have to. Their silent solidarity was a more powerful weapon than any fist could ever be. The hulking man, his face now pale with shock, stumbled back, his bravado evaporating like mist in the sun. The other 3 men scrambled to get out of the way, their taunts and jeers now forgotten, replaced by a panicked, desperate silence. The crowd, which had stood by in silent complicity, now watched in stunned admiration. One of the Green Berets, a man with a kind, weathered face, stepped forward. He knelt down beside Lena's wheelchair, his eyes meeting hers. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low, respectful hum, "your sacrifice is not forgotten." The man then stood and turned to the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the silent onlookers. His voice, now just a whisper, carried a powerful, undeniable weight. "Some battles are fought for honor, not for headlines. The greatest heroes are often the quietest." The 4 men, humbled and defeated, slinked away, their once proud shoulders now slumped in shame. No one had to say anything. The message was clear. The silent, unwavering honor of a few had triumphed over the loud, empty cruelty of many. The Green Berets stood there for a moment, a silent guard of honor, a living monument to the woman in the wheelchair. Then one by one they turned and walked away, their quiet footsteps echoing the powerful dignity of their presence. The crowd parted for them, their heads now bowed in respect, their silence no longer a sign of fear, but of reverence. Lena, surrounded once again by the quiet, remained still, but a small, triumphant smile played on her lips. She had faced down explosions, bullets, and the crippling weight of her own loss. But in this quiet moment, she felt a profound sense of peace. The world had seen her not as a victim, but as a hero. The sun broke through the clouds, a brilliant golden light that washed over the park, illuminating the quiet dignity of a woman who had given everything, and a group of men who had reminded the world that some promises are never broken. Lena's sacrifice was a silent anthem, a powerful testament to the fact that true heroes are not always defined by what they can do, but by what they are willing to endure. And sometimes the quietest stories hold the most powerful lessons of all. We want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Have you ever witnessed an act of silent heroism? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that honor the silent heroes among us.